Hello, and welcome to this training session on basic fire awareness. In today's course, we're going to talk about legal requirements for fire safety training. We will try to understand what is a fire and how does fire start, what are fire hazards, how can we prevent fire and work safely, what should you do if you discover fire, and what should you do if you hear a fire alarm. So the first point was, why should an employer have fire safety training every year? So as per the legislation, there are various acts which put a responsibility on the employees and employers to have these sessions every year, which are the Health and Safety Act, Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulation, the Regulatory Reform, Fire Safety Regulation, and Fire Services Act. So, under these regulations, employers and employees have some shared responsibilities. So, as an employer, G4S as well as Trust should prepare and practice emergency procedures, provide basic fire awareness training, ensure that all escape routes and exits are always clear and free from risk. It must also ensure that fire detection, fire alarm, and emergency lightings are provided, and also ensure that firefighting equipment is provided to aid escape. As employees as well, you have some responsibilities which are take reasonable care not only of yourself but of health and safety of your colleagues, customers and members of public. Do not put yourself or others at risk by doing or failing to do things you are supposed to do. To cooperate with your employer and follow the training provided. Do not tamper with any equipment provided for health and safety reasons. For example, do not misuse a fire extinguisher or move its location, or do not wedge a fire door open. So, now that we understand our legal responsibility as an employer and employee to have fire safety as well as health and safety trainings, we will now look at what fire is and what elements helps a fire to start and sustain. Fire is basically a chemical reaction which happens when it gets air or oxygen precisely. Fire will include three elements mainly, which is fuel, heat, and oxygen. Fuel could be anything that can catch fire. It could be in a solid form, liquid form, or gaseous form. Solid form of fuel could be furnitures, papers, beds and mattresses. Anything solid that can catch fire is a solid fuel for the fire. There are liquid fuels, which can be any natural liquids or oils like petroleum, gasoline, or oil, or any other chemical that can catch fire or which are combustible in nature. Gases like methane and hydrogen can also catch fire and therefore act as fuels. The next element which contributes to start of a fire or sustenance of a fire is heat. Please understand there has to be a minimum temperature which is called an ignition point for a fire to start. Fire never starts in extreme cold or cold temperatures. There has to be heat generated, which could be for various reasons. It could be a friction, which could be fire itself, or which could be heat generation generated by anything that can cause fire. Oxygen is a key element which is required for fire to start and sustain and spread. Oxygen is available in plenty in the air around us, also in oxygen cylinders that we use in hospitals and other places. If the three elements are allowed to come together, there is a high potential for fire to occur. However, if one of these elements is removed from the triangle, then a fire cannot start or be maintained. For example, if you try to remove the fuel, for example, let's take a hob, a gas hob, which when you turn on, the ignition, the spark provides the heat and the heat for the fire to start. Oxygen is available in plenty anyway, and the gas is also supplied through the pipeline. If you try to cut off one of these, that's just turning off the gas, then the fire automatically dies out. Although there is oxygen, there might be some amount of heat generated as well around the hob. Because we have removed fuel from the equation, the fire dies out. Similarly, if we try to starve oxygen or starve of oxygen, then the fire dies out as well. So in the event when we try to cover a small fire with a fire blanket, what we try to do is cut off the oxygen supply. Similarly, if we try to reduce heat, the fire dies out as well. For example, dose fire with water. Now, how can a fire start? Fire are the most common cause. Sorry, what are the most common causes of fire? It could be defective electrical equipment, smoking, cooking, poor storage of combustible materials, overloaded sockets, waste or rubbish, arson. So here are some slides for you to have a look of what different defective electrical equipment could cause a fire. So here is a server room which caught fire because of overheating. Smoking, and especially discarding the cigarette butt, or the cigarette without putting it off completely, can cause fire. Cooking, poor storage of combustible materials, overloaded sockets again, so faulty equipment as well as overloaded sockets, rubbish and improper storage of oils and other items which are combustible in nature, and arson. Other fire hazards could be poor housekeeping, blocking escape routes, firefighting equipment blocked, fire exits blocked, fire doors wedged open, tumble dryer lint, and many, many, many more. If you look around in your daily lives, I'm sure you will spot many more fire hazards that could be removed. So, poor housekeeping, for example, if you're not putting your housekeeping material or you're cleaning cupboards, etc., you're not keeping it organized, if everything's just dumped together, obviously it can easily catch fire. If you block escape routes with your trolleys, with your beds, with your wheelchairs, obviously in case there's a fire incident, then that's stopping people from escaping. So escape routes being blocked is another fire hazard. Firefighting equipment's being blocked, so if it's not accessible, if there are furnitures and things put in front of it and it's not accessible, that could be a fire hazard. Fire exits blocked, so if there are fire exits but they are blocked by furnitures or any items such that people cannot use the fire exits. Fire doors being wedged open. So the whole purpose of having fire doors is they have the ability to stop the fire for about 30 minutes. Yeah, they have this fire safety strips inserted in them which can hold fire. So the fact fire safety doors are left open, that means you're just allowing fire to spread through easily. The fire doors are not able to perform its job because they are left open. If they were closed, they could have stopped it significantly, thereby obviously allowing people more time to escape. Therefore, please make sure that the fire doors, whenever you pass through, are closed properly. Tumble dryer lint is also an example of fire hazard, and as I said earlier, you could find many other examples of fire hazard around you. Workplace fire safety features. So, your workplace has numerous fire safety features to help with the risk from a fire. So, fire alarm with smoke and heat detectors are one of them. So, automatic smoke and heat detectors will activate the alarm to warn others so an evacuation can commence. You would also have seen alarm call points, which are located throughout the premises so the alarm can be easily raised to warn others and an evacuation can commence. Surely you would also have come across the emergency lightings and emergency exit signs to help you to guide to the nearest exit in case of an emergency. You would also see safety signs which tells you what steps you must follow in case you spot a fire. So you would raise the alarm, leave the building using the nearest exit, and assemble at the nearest fire assembly point. Do not come back to the building and do not use lifts. Please remember that your fire assembly points are always the nearest car parks to the building you are in. So sorry, if you're in Jubilee Wing, then obviously the car park nearest to Wing will be your fire assembly point. Similarly, if you are in A&E, the A&E car park would be your nearest fire assembly point. If you work in Shirley House or maternity, then the maternity car park is your fire assembly point. So your workplace also has fire safety doors, surely which you use on a regular basis. These assist with slowing the spread of fire and smoke. And also you have fire exits, which are again meant to be kept closed when not in use. You also have fire marshals. So fire marshals take overall charge during the fire situation to make sure the emergency services are called. Direct fire wardens liaise with emergency services on their arrival, ensure everyone is accounted for, and find out what has happened and why. We also have fire wardens who take command of a specified area in an emergency. They are the means of communication. They check all the rooms and toilets are clear, encourage all building occupants to exit the building, ensure that all casualties or disabled persons are escorted to a place of safety. They stop people using lift and report problems encountered during the evacuation, that is, people who refuse to leave or need assistance, to the fire marshal. Then you will also have fire blankets, which are an equipment used from escaping or protecting yourself from fire. You also have fire extinguishers of various types. Now, the fires are classified into class A, B, C, D, E, and F. This is purely based on what material is burning. If the combustible material or the material on fire is a solid, such as wood or paper or clothing or fabric, it is called a class A fire. It's called a class B if the flammable or the thing burning is a liquid such as petrol or paint. If the fire is fueled by a flammable gas that like hydrogen or methane or butane, is called a class C fire. Class D fire if it's a chemical like magnesium or potassium. Electrical fire or class E fire if the equipment on fire is electrical equipment, and it's a class F fire if it's caused by cooking oil, like for example, chip in a pan while frying. So, as I mentioned briefly, there are various types of fire extinguishers or firefighting equipments. Fire extinguishers and fire blankets are provided throughout the premises to aid evacuation safely, and these items are provided for everyone's safety and should not be misused. Also, please note that you must not use these equipments if you are not trained to use them. Certainly, because there is a particular way of using each of them. They are not all used in the same manner. There are slight differences on how they should be used. So, the fire extinguishers are water fire extinguishers, foam fire extinguishers, dry powder fire extinguishers, carbon dioxide CO2, that is carbon dioxide extinguishers, and wet chemical extinguishers and fire blankets. As you also see, each of them work ideally in different types of fires. So, if it's a class A fire, as I spoke about, if it's a solid uh, burning, then it's ideal to use a water fire extinguisher, which is labeled red. It's ideal to use a foam extinguisher if it's a class A or B fire. That means the combustible substance is a solid or a liquid, and it's normally labeled in a pale yellow color, and it says foam on it. Dry powder labeled in blue are used for class A, B, C, D, and E fires. Carbon dioxide extinguishers are mostly used for class B fires, electrical fires. Wet chemicals are used on class A and F, and fire blankets are mostly used on class B and class F. Again, this is purely for your understanding. As far as your rule concerns, your duty is to escape as soon as possible using the escape routes, and make sure that you're not blocking the way as you leave. Uh, and this would be mainly down to the trained personnel to use this extinguisher. So just bear in mind for your knowledge and understanding, though, the different types of fire extinguishers. So water fire extinguisher, foam extinguisher, dry powder extinguisher, carbon dioxide extinguisher, wet chemical, and fire blanket. Fire prevention and safe working. So what should you do? Always read the fire action notice, you always, so that you always remember what actions you must take in case you spot a fire, which is, I repeat, I have done it in a previous slide, but I will still repeat. You will first raise an alarm, leave the building by the nearest exit, assemble in the nearest fire assembly point, do not return to the building until authorized, and do not use lifts. Know where your nearest emergency exit is, so whichever area you're working in, please be aware of your nearest fire exit. Please be aware of your nearest fire assembly point. As I mentioned before, it would normally be your nearest car park. Be familiar with how the fire alarm sounds. A fire alarm test will be carried out every week at your workplace. Normally it's Fridays. At Croydon Trust, this is to ensure the fire alarm is functioning correctly, and also you become familiar with the sound. What do you need to do? So read the fire action notice, know where your nearest emergency exit is, know the assembly point, be familiar with the fire alarm sound, and also participate in the biannual fire drills. So fire drill will be carried out twice a year normally. Please remember that. It is biannual, that means it's carried out twice a year. This is to check the evacuation procedure is adequate, and so you can become familiar with and practice how to evacuate the premises safely and quickly. What else could you do? Do not use a defective equipment. Don't overload sockets. Don't use faulty equipment or split cables, etc. Don't store combustible next to electrical equipment, and carry out user checks always, and report if you find any faults. So if you see something, especially if it's something wrong, please talk about it, please report it, put a label, put them away so that no one else uses them, and also make sure you notify someone from the management or supervisory team so that they can take action to prevent any hazard happening. Do not smoke in the premises. As you know, we also have a no smoking policy. Do not smoke when you're in the hospital premises. Keep escape routes clear at all times and do not block fire exits. Ensure that you have good housekeeping practices. Do not wedge open fire doors. Do not block the fire extinguishers. Keep the cleaning cupboards or your lockers locked and clear. Well, obviously, you'll have items in it, but keep them locked away. Store flammable materials in the cabinet. And what would you do if you discover a fire? So, first and foremost, shout out and alert the people around you if you see a smoke or a fire. Shout out to alert the people around you, warn or remove anybody who is in immediate danger, and close the door if it's safe to do so. Break the glass and press the alarm. Evacuate the building using the nearest safest exit point. Follow the green sign. Do not use lift under any circumstance, and do not stop to collect personal belongings. Report to the building assembly area and wait on a roll call to be taken. Do not enter the building until advised to do so by a fire warden or a fire marshal. What would you do on hearing the alarm? Do not think that it's a false alarm, so act quickly. Evacuate the building, and as I mentioned, follow the steps and think about moving cleaning trolleys or any tools or equipment that might be blocking the escape routes. And remember, yeah, I know this has been covered, but because it's important, let's go through it quickly once again. Raise the alarm quickly, calmly leave the building by the nearest exit, assist others in leaving, close all doors behind you. As we said, fire deeds needs to be left closed because they can help you in stopping the spread of fire. Gather at the assembly point, report any concerns, keep the doors closed, and know where your nearest exit is. Do not panic or run, or do not put yourself in danger. Do not go to collect your possessions or or work before leaving. Do not block or misuse firefighting equipment. Do not use lifts during an evacuation, or do not ignore the fire alarm. How can you improve fire safety in your department? By reporting hazards that you may come across, keep good housekeeping practices, by making sure the combustible materials are stored safely, and making sure the escapes and exits are always clear. Do not overload the sockets or use defective equipment again. So thank you very much and stay safe. Hope you all remember what we learned today. This is not new. We have spoken about it before. It's more of a refresher. Okay. And all the best for the assessment that you're going to have soon. Hope you all score well and pass the exam so that you don't have to go through this training again. So take care and bye.